The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com. The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog and join the Progressive Army.
Today is Thursday. It is August 27th, 2020. Thanks so much for joining me. Let's talk about this going on in Kenosha. Mainly from the vantage point of I need everyone to be very crystal clear on what we're dealing with. We're dealing with a conservative movement that under no circumstances will they ever admit that their side is wrong. Even with the killing. Let's think of it this way. I want to go straight to Kyle Rittenhouse, the 17-year-old who crossed state lines with a gun and went with the intention of shooting. He went with the intention of, quote unquote, defending property, right? The problem is that he ended up killing two people, and one injured so severely he had to lose his arm. They amputated his arm. The excuse now that they are giving this kid, this man, is that it was all in self-defense. I'm struggling with this because I'm trying to be measured with my statements. They said he was defending himself. And yet and still throughout the night, we don't see any other incident with the militia, with the gang, of them having to protect themselves. Self-defense. This is something that no one is really talking about. You had all these militiamen, all these gang members there with weapons, and yet only Kyle Rittenhouse found himself in a position where he had to defend himself. And they conveniently start this narrative, conservatives conveniently start the narrative at the spot where he was running away from the mob. Never mind the fact that they don't ask the question, why was he running and why were they chasing him? They leave out the fact that he shot somebody in the head and the crowd, for whatever reason, I don't necessarily, this is, okay, can I? All right. I'm sorry, don't call me an asshole, folks. But black folks, when you hear gunshots, we run away, okay? We are not running towards a gunshot. But I digress. Our white allies, you guys are different. You're built differently and you have a perspective of fear differently. We just know that in every single movie in the history of movies, black people get killed first. So when we hear gunshots, we run the opposite ass direction. But clearly, this crowd was pursuing him because they wanted to ensure that he wasn't going to kill anyone else and alert the police and not let him get away. I think if anything else, they were trying to make sure that this guy has to be held accountable. He can't be allowed to get away. And so they chased him and they chased him to the police and the police did nothing. Nothing. So this is the spot where conservatives always start the narrative. They're like, oh, he was running away. He was fearing for his life. And whether the truth of that is indifferent, is immaterial to them. The murder of two people is immaterial to them. They don't care. And that's what I want you to make sure that you understand. We are dealing with people who, if you disagree with them politically, they do not care if you get murdered. I'm sorry to the folks on the video. You're seeing my microphone having kind of an impotent moment here. I'm not going to edit it because what the hell? I cannot stress enough how asymmetrical and how out of balance America is. On the one hand, you have protesters who are labeled as radical terrorist anarchists who want to destroy America and who want to invade the suburbs, and they want to mob your home, and they want to, assault your suburban white women. This is the language from conservatives. When all these people are saying is stop shooting us. That's what they're saying. That's what our protesters are saying. And the George Floyd protest is like, stop stepping on our neck. Stop the brutality of the police state that is overwhelmingly in the black community, but it exists everywhere. We're saying stop killing us, and we are labeled as if we are terrorists. And we literally have a domestic terrorist who executed 2 people and shot the arm of another individual off, and this little shit is celebrated. They have a GoFundMe. It's probably up to $100,000 now. It was up to $50,000 yesterday. Ann Coulter, right-wing fascist commentators like, I want Kyle for president. He's being venerated as a hero. So, and the president of the United States is sending in troops down to Kenosha, Wisconsin, or over to Kenosha, Wisconsin. But he says nothing and gives no condemnation of the fact that one of his supporters, who was on the front line, on the front row of his Iowa of his Iowa rally in January, a MAGA hat wearing teen. I called it yesterday. A photo came out of this MAGA hat wearing teen on the front row of a Donald Trump rally. Donald Trump doesn't condemn it, yet he sends in the troops. Here's what you need to understand very clearly. They value their property more than your life. Not all property. They value their property more than your life. And if you pose any threat to someone else's, not even their own property, it is the proverbial property. It may not be their property. It's somebody's property, and they'll kill you over that property. They see nothing wrong with shooting and killing you because you are a mob. Despite the fact that you're out there protesting on behalf of preserving life, they have no problem labeling you as some type of horrific, terrifying monster that needs to be put down. And this is the reality of the asymmetrical fight that we're in. We're not dealing with rational actors, reasonable actors. We're dealing with people who will shoot and kill you over a car, but then turn around and look at you as if you are the monster because you're out there protesting on behalf of Black lives or against police brutality. Make sure that you are crystal clear. This matters not only in terms of people who are out in the street protesting. This matters also in terms of those of us in the commentary class. Those of us in these media spaces. If we continue to compare these two groups as if there's an equivalence between the two, then what you have created is the perfect fascistic system where they are able to get away with murder. They are able to murder people with impunity. And we can't even protest without having the president of the United States send in federal troops to crush us. The NBA is striking. Teams, the WNBA is on a strike. Some NFL players are striking. And they're striking on behalf of Black lives. They're striking against this police shooting of Jacob Blake. LeBron James is speaking out. Teams are speaking out. Coaches are speaking out. And I salute them. I salute you. The media is calling it a boycott. Everywhere, people are calling it a boycott. Clearly, you don't boycott your job. You strike your job. But it's the fear of allowing the conversation about striking in general to get into the national conversation, the national discourse. They fear that. That's why everyone is calling it a boycott. No, What they are doing is exercising their right as labor to refuse their labor in order to get some type of political change. That's the quintessential definition of a strike. The reason the powerful and the media, their co-conspirators, don't want us to talk about a strike is because a strike, a general strike, which is inclusive of a consumer strike, the consumer strike, some labor strikes are very critical, like people who work on key infrastructure portions of the United States, people who work at docks, people who literally can chokehold the country with their labor. Some of those are probably the most powerful strikes that you could have. Outside of that, most of our labor, they can survive a day or two, maybe even a week without our labor in a strike. But people who work in those key infrastructure industries and sectors, oh man, they could bring this country to a halt. But the way the rest of us can get in on a strike in a very significant fashion is with our consumption, because if we withhold our consumption, we bring this system to its knees. I want to repeat that. If we withhold, actually, let me look at the camera. If we withhold our consumption, we bring this system to its knees. I got to get on my socialist shit for a second here. And then on the next segment, I'll give you the intersection of class and race. But right now, let me just talk about this class thing for a second. It is our consumption that creates every bit of wealth that you see on the face of this planet. There's not a billionaire in existence that did not become a billionaire without our consumption. It may be a few degrees separation in some cases, but in most cases, it involves our consumption. Our labor is a huge part of that too. It is our labor, our work, the fact that you go out there and create products for your boss. I don't care if it's a software product. I don't care what it is. It is your labor, and it is our consumption that creates all of the wealth that exists in humanity. And if we withhold our labor and our consumption vis-a-vis a general strike, we bring this system to its knees and to the bargaining table. That's why they don't want us to insert the language of strike in the national discourse. But what the NBA players and NFL players and everyone else, that WNBA, what all of them are doing is a strike. And it demonstrates the overwhelming power that we really have. But the powerful in this country cannot allow us to realize that we ourselves are powerful. Collectively, we are powerful. United, we are powerful. But it is extremely difficult to get millions of people to work in concert to implement a general strike. Oh, but if a superstar was about that life, like LeBron James, if he was, and this is why Jared Kushner, the president's son-in-law, wants to go and talk to him, because if LeBron James really exercised his ability as a superstar athlete, one of the most influential people on the face of the planet, if LeBron James said, hey, not only are we going to strike, but I think everybody needs to strike. I think there needs to be a general strike. He would instantly become a level of threat that they viewed every single body in the 60s. Just like they love him now. But if he organized millions of people across the globe just by tweeting about it, oh man, LeBron James will quickly become enemy number one, and you will see not only white supremacists turn against him, but you will also see the black faces of white supremacy turn against him, and you also see the neoliberal faces of white supremacy turn against him, and you'll even see Barack Obama turn against him. You know why? Because the powerful and the ruling elite can never let enough of us understand that collectively we can destroy them simply by refusing our labor and refusing consumption. There are no billionaires without your labor and your consumption.
The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog and join the Progressive Army.
Yeah. Hey, yo, that music hits kind of hard. I'm not done with it yet. I'm gonna throw a beat on it this weekend, and it's just kind of banging. That hit me in the chest. Let's talk about the let's talk about the intersection of race and class in this thing. Here we are again, with an uprising that's not of the magnitude of the George Floyd protest, but nonetheless an uprising, an opportunity to force systemic change in this planet, in this country, and on this planet. And yet again, it centers on race issues. We have the ability, and maybe I need to do it. I keep talking about all these other platforms that don't do it, and I do it, but maybe I should just do nonstop videos about the intersection of class and race so that people can get it. That even though this is something that class reductionists reject, if there's going to be a revolution in this country, it is going to be sparked off by racial issues. And it is incumbent upon us who understand that race and class are inseparable to make sure that everyone who is involved understands that what we're dealing with is not just a racial issue, but what we're dealing with is a racial issue that's rooted in white supremacy, which is the frontline defense for capitalism. If we don't take the time to make sure people understand that, then we have wasted yet a second opportunity in 2020 alone to make sure that the world understands that what's going on around us is something that is so intolerable that we are fighting back. In other words, if we don't capitalize on this, then we would have made it clear that we're not really serious about any type of revolution. Political revolution, actual revolution, a nonviolent revolution, violent, whatever. It's going to jump off based on race, because that is the problem in America that America can't keep hidden. See, America can disguise class issues. I shared a meme this morning of a house. The front of the house was nice, beautiful even. The back of the house was completely dilapidated. It was atrocious. And on the back of the house, that represents the economy for most people. The front of the house represents the economy for Wall Street. They could put a nice clean face on it because they're always able to say, you just need to work a little bit harder because everything is working for all these other people. But we can't put that Band-Aid. We can't put that Band-Aid on race because these cops can't help themselves. These pigs cannot help themselves. They cannot help but to pull the trigger because they want to hurt. They want to kill people. You can't tell me that they don't have a deep-seated desire to kill people. And who do you kill? You kill people that you don't see as fully human. We can cover up class issues in this country because this country has been doing that since this country was founded. We have never been able to cover up racial issues because of the nature of racial issues and because of how this system will kill black folks with impunity, with complete disregard for the sanctity of life. And what gets the people moving? The sight of injustice. I'm sorry if it's going to require that we go through the painstaking efforts of showing people how this is not just a racial issue. It's also an issue that Jacob Flake lived in a community that already had a condescending gaze from the police department. Not just because it was black, but because it was black and impoverished. I said this on my show some years ago, and people, a handful of people didn't like it. I think most people got it, but I'm going to say it again. I wish a cop would come to my neighborhood and act a fool like that. I don't even live I live in a comfortably middle class, not lower middle class, not upper middle class, but middle class. My backyard is pretty small, but we live comfortably enough to ensure that we have some political power, and that if a cop came in our neighborhood and was reckless and had no regard for human life or even disrespected us. Now imagine the amount of power that a rich black person like Oprah Winfrey would have. Do you think a police officer is going to cruise through Oprah Winfrey's neighborhood looking for someone to harass? It would be their last day on the job because of the political and economic power that someone in Oprah Winfrey's class carries. It's just a matter of fact. Does that break down when it comes down to somebody on the street and they don't know who you are and a cop doesn't know who you are? Yeah, no, it definitely breaks down because you could be a rich person and they don't know who you are. All they see is a black person. That's the difference. But if we're talking about community policing, you will never find police officers in a wealthy black community doing the shit that they do in poor black communities, period. And I've been poor enough to know this. We know I've seen both sides of it. I've seen police officers in schools in wealthy communities treat those kids like they were adults and treated them with respect. Yes, sir, and no, sir. Yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. And I've seen police officers in poor communities, in schools in poor communities, smack and hit children. So there is a difference and there is an intersection based on class. This absolutely would not have happened in some prestigious community filled with the black boule. The problem is that we don't have enough people who can successfully and accurately and efficiently discuss that. And that's what we have to discuss in order for us to get the class and racial solidarity. We have to get the class and the racial solidarity between poor people across all races, middle class people across all races, and folks who think that they're wealthy, but at the end of the day, you're still working and you're still labor. And if you ever stop giving your labor, then you're not going to be wealthy anymore. We have to have racial and class solidarity across all of those lines. But if people are holding back their revolutionary spirit because this is centered on race and they're not willing to make the connections between race and class, then we're going to find ourselves time and time again missing the opportunity for systemic change in this country vis-a-vis revolution. No matter how you define revolution, it's going to be centered around racial issues because America cannot help itself with its racist, white supremacist infrastructure. But they have done a good job of disguising all of our class issues. Just got an update that the NBA strike is already over. Them boys ain't have enough money saved up. Them boys been too busy partying. They've been splurging. They got to get them checks. Man, that thing lasted every bit of 35 minutes. Anyway, there's never gonna. We can't count on celebrities. I'll see what LeBron James does. Right, in the long run, but we can't count on celebrities. All right. Okay, so anyway, yeah, Robert Horry. I released a video earlier today of a clip of him. I'm not going to put it in the podcast because you can see it on YouTube, on Facebook. Just go over there. Make sure, while you're there, make sure you subscribe because my YouTube numbers look pretty pathetic. But anyway, that's totally besides the point. I put out a video earlier of Robert Horry and my response to his reaction. And he began to, Robert Horry is a former NBA player. He's a sports commentator now, black father, has a 21-year-old and a 14-year-old son. And he discussed how this really moved him in a way that he was, just once again having to have the talk with his son about the fact that, when you run into police officers, do everything that you can to get home safely. The only thing, and I pretty much said everything that I wanted to say in that clip, so go watch that clip. But I just want to say this. It is the height of frustration to realize that you are in a position in life where you cannot assert your dignity as a human being, assert your right to exist as a human being, and to assert your right to be respected as a human being. You can't do that in the same fashion that white folks can. Everybody wants to be respected. And everyone, if they feel disrespected, justifiably or not, if you feel disrespected, we seek to get our respect and our dignity and our humanity. This is not a thing of hubris. It's a thing of human nature. It is not a problem of hubris. It is a problem of human nature. It's not a problem of toxic masculinity, because I've seen plenty of women assert their right to be human against the authorities. Who more so deserves our indignation than a systemic level disrespect of our existence and our humanity? So, of course, our demand for respect is going to be heightened when it comes from the authorities over us. And we have that desire. It's an innate desire inside of every single one of us. And yet, in order for my kids to get home safely, in order for black kids to get home safely, white folks, you don't have to worry about this to the same extent. You do have to worry about it escalating and you ending up in jail. For the most part, you probably will end up in jail if you try to assert your humanity and your dignity and your respect against these police officers. In some rare occasions, you will end up dead simply because you asserted your right to be respected. Because the moment a black person asserts their right to be respected by a police officer, it escalates into something that will get us killed. And so in order for my kids to come home safely, I have to tell them, father to son, and eventually man to man, that I need you to be willing to sacrifice your dignity as a human being, to sacrifice the amount of respect that you feel like you're due. I need you to eat that moment. I need you to suck it up and take it, internalize it, and be quiet so that you could get home to me safely.
Go to www.patreon.com/The BPD Show and get twice the content and unfiltered interviews without any of the commercial interruptions.
And here we go. At this point in every single episode, I'd like to take a second to thank the people who make the show possible, our patrons. Very special welcome to Daniel Westall. Thank you for becoming a patron. Jessica Bickus, Erica and Brian Cox, Shy Bureaucrat. Oh my goodness. It takes a minute sometimes, folks. Very special welcome to Dr. the MBO69, Angela Nichols, Blake Brombach, Real Life Jolly, Daniel Jimenez, Machine Gun Etiquette, all one word, LaShawn Wilson, and Mary E. Kerr. Thank you all for becoming patrons. You too can become a part of this prestigious and prodigious patron family by going to patreon.com/The BPD Show, where you get twice the content, uncut, unfiltered interviews, none of the commercial interruptions, and you give me the ability to speak power to the powerless, whether powerful like it or not.
Welcome back to The Benjamin Dixon Show. Visit us online at thebenjamindixonshow.com.
want to go over one last detail. This one is really about the media. And I didn't even realize we're already over time, but let's talk about it. The New York Post, which is a right-wing media outlet, really gives us the perfect demonstration of how they view blackness and how they view whiteness, particularly whiteness that intersects with white supremacy. Now, when I say whiteness, I think it's safe to say in our community, people who listen to me, that unless I say otherwise, I'm talking about a very specific type of whiteness. I'm talking about whiteness that kowtows and protects and props up this white supremacist system. Obviously not talking about white allies who understand the necessity of tearing down the white supremacist system because the white supremacist system is detrimental to them ultimately because it is the frontline defense for capitalism. And if you're trying to get any material benefit out of the system, you're going to have to attack capitalism, but you can't get to capitalism unless you first break down the front line of white supremacy. So when I say whiteness and I say white people, you should hear that. That said, this racist ass newspaper put up, and I'll put it up on the screen for people watching the video. The New York Post said that, here's their headline on Twitter: Jacob Blake had a knife in his car when he was approached by police, the Department of Justice says. I've got a knife in my car. Does that mean I should be killed? Then the next day, they put up another tweet saying the suspected teen gunman Kyle Rittenhouse spotted cleaning Kenosha graffiti before the shooting. And they show a picture of him scrubbing the graffiti. Jacob Blake was shot 7 times in the back and is only alive by the miracle and the help of doctors. Kyle Rittenhouse killed 2 people and shot another man's arm off. But who do they venerate and who do they attack? Patrons, stay tuned. Everybody else, see you tomorrow.
The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.patreon.com/The BPD Show and support The Benjamin Dixon Show. If you like this episode, be sure to share, like, and subscribe.